All right, so I was going to just give some reflections, but give an overview of the kinds of things we're doing at the Center for Biologics in the area of real-world evidence. Oops. How do I move the slides forward with this?
Big.
Oh, sorry. Oh, there we go. All right, so before starting, I thought I would give the usual disclaimer, which is the comments and views expressed here are my own. I don't have any financial interests to disclose. I work for the FDA. Just to remind people in the room what it is that we do. So here are our CBER product areas, our biologics. So those are just for a frame of reference. So you don't get us confused with our larger sister centers. So 21st Century Cures is what's really driving a lot of the real-world data, real-world evidence initiatives for the centers. You've seen, I think, many of these slides before talking about it directs FDA to evaluate potential uses, and specifically for new indications and then to meet post-approval study requirements. So just below that, I wanted to talk about some of the real-world activities that we have going on, both at FDA and then CBER. So sometimes it's a bit difficult to unwind who's doing what, so I'll try to keep that a bit straight. So public meetings and workshops, and this is a perfect example of a public meeting and workshop. So I wasn't really going to spend a lot of time on those. So that's some of the activities that we're engaged with. The next one is sort of data generation systems, evidence generation systems, followed by actual studies that we're conducting in-house that Dr. Azurieta had mentioned in his talk. And then other things going on as far as joint activities across centers like framework document, guidance development, and then reviews of submissions. And it's going to be a little lighter at that end because it's sort of difficult to say a lot at this point since work is under development. So as far as generation systems, we have sort of 3 or 4 major systems. So our big 3 are sort of the CBER BEST system for generating real-world evidence, the Sentinel system, that's a Harvard program that's Rich Platt leads, and then the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which Hector uses and spoke about with his work. And the lead on that, our main collaborator is Jeff Kalman, and our many collaborators at CMS. So and then finally, we have a lot of patient input activities and infrastructure building going on in that area as well. So you can see just highlighting differences between the various systems. BEST is really focusing on electronic health records specific for biologic product work that we're doing. Sentinel and CMS are really focused in the claims data areas. And then I just finally wanted to say our goal with building these systems is that so they can be used not only by us as FDA, but also stakeholders. So for instance, Sentinel, the Harvard program, can be sort of accessed and used by industry and other stakeholders through access to the Reagan-Udall Foundation. Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that data can be accessed through the Research Data Acquisition Centers process that they have in place. So, and as CBER BEST gets up and running, we'll also roll that out so that there's public access to that infrastructure, and the same for the patient input activities. Those 2 activities are just so new right now, less than 6 months old, so we haven't really fully developed those into systems that can be accessed. All right, so the BEST system is part of the Sentinel initiative. We launched it in September 2017. The goals are very similar to what we do with the Sentinel Harvard group. Our goal is to build sort of a data infrastructure, tools, and then experts so that we can conduct queries and sort of epidemiological study of biologic products. So that's sort of one part of the contract. And then the second one is sort of a more aspirational and developmental and research goal, which is to automate adverse event reporting. So to use methods like machine learning, natural language processing, to mine biologic product adverse events from EHRs and then automatically submit those to FDA either through MedWatch or through other systems that we have. We're getting ready to renew the program because it was a one-year program. So at the bottom, we have a request for proposals that's currently out. We posted 2 RFPs, and so the information's at the bottom of the slide. Those will be 5-year contracts. The current BEST contract is only a 1-year contract. All right, so goals as far as BEST. So what does BEST do for us that other programs can't do for us? Well, it helps us to better meet our regulatory needs. I think one critical thing to know about blood products, and people, I think the previous panelist, one of my colleague from one of the other centers from Cedar mentioned blood transfusions. Blood transfusions aren't very well reimbursed. They're not well captured in claims. So you really have to try to get through those more through EHR. So we did a study with CMS probably a dozen years ago where only 45% of blood utilization was being captured in the CMS claims database. So we have to have other ways to get at that information. So improved coding and ascertainment for blood products and transfusions. Our goal is to get more rapid access to medical chart information, and then also build cohorts of EHR phenotypes for exposures, so those receiving, say, let's say transfusions or a specific vaccine, and then those that have specific outcomes, let's say Guillain-Barré syndrome, we can try to pull those people together and understand more about those medical conditions. And our goal in this type of system is really to build better, faster, cheaper systems so that we conduct safety studies, but also these important effectiveness studies to generate real evidence for our products. All right, so moving on, there is the Harvard system, the Sentinel Harvard system that we use. So this has been a workhorse for us over the last several years. 225 million persons. This is largely claims data. We have 2 programs within the system. Our biggest one, I think, is PRISM that we've done a fair amount of work in, and that's for vaccines. I think that consists of 4 major data partners. So it's a subset of the larger Sentinel system, and that covers 170 million persons. Studies conducted, so I was trying to go back and see how many studies we've actually conducted in the system. We've conducted dozens of protocol-based safety assessments, a lot of rapid queries, and then we just recently completed in the last year a white paper, which is a study of vaccine effectiveness, and then a small pilot study along with that. So that's a lot of benefits have come from that system. CMS, which Dr. Azurieta used, I have to mention Hector's name about, I think, 10 times, because I was trying to count how many times he mentioned my name. So this has been another great workhorse for us as far as data systems. It's claims data. It covers 50 million beneficiaries greater than 65 years of age. We've conducted a lot of studies over the years. I think we started with CMS back in 2002, so it's been a long road and journey for us. So we've done dozens of large epidemiological safety studies, some with chart review. We've done the vaccine effectiveness studies. And another component of this is rapid cycle analysis. So it's near real-time analysis where we're getting data updates on a weekly basis during the annual influenza season so that we can look at GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome. But you can kind of think about these rapid cycle analysis tools as we think about using real-world evidence. How can we monitor safety or effectiveness of these products better and faster? And these types of systems where you're doing rapid cycle analysis are one option. They take a little bit more effort to set up and resource intensive, but if you have a specific issue that you're looking at, it's really a good way to monitor an outcome of interest. Patient input activities, so we put out a broad agency announcement, and our goal here is to solicit proposals to collect patient input and patient information and preferences in 5 disease areas that are listed there. We have several proposals under review, and our next steps really are, to make those awards. And part of this goal is also to do mobile app is built in mobile app capacity, ways to get information and elicit that information and record it into systems is one of the sets of tools that we're trying to build, and one of those is mobile apps. And we've been collaborating with Harvard to develop a mobile app to solicit patient input, and I think that's in hemophilia. And that work's just starting at this point in time. As far as other real-world evidence studies that we've done, so we use real-world evidence for safety, and we've done that for years. And so obviously we want to get to be able to use that for effectiveness and other types of endpoints. So I just wanted to mention two examples where we've successfully, two examples of studies that led to labeling changes, and one of those was the immune globulins and thrombotic events. That was a study we published finally in Transfusion. The one thing interesting about this specific project is it didn't only use CMS data, but CBER labs also worked to quantify the amount of, I believe it was factor 11, activated factor 11, in these products, and then we did a correlation between adverse events and the amount of activated factor 11. So it was really a nice mix between lab data and then this large medical-based data. And then the second study was the rotavirus and intussusception work, and that was done through the Sentinel Harvard Pilgrim program. Catherine Yee led that effort, and that's really looking at intussusception following the rotavirus vaccine. Other effectiveness studies, so Hector really talked about number 2. I'm just going to mention these in a very high level since I only have 3 minutes, and I have to mention Hector Zurrietta's name, I think 5 more times. Hector did a high dose versus standard dose influenza. He's very bored with this, by the way, as he mentioned. I'm not. I'm proud of this work that he did. I wasn't involved with it. I just, he said I gave him funding to do it. So, but anyway, it was really important work, and it did really sort of confirm results of a confirmatory trial that was for an accelerated approval of this product. So really good work, nicely done. Herpes zoster he mentioned, so I'm not going to go through that. I wanted to mention again, getting through this rapid response and rapid cycle type analysis. This particular flu season, as one of the speakers mentioned yesterday, was bad and a very difficult, harsh season. So CDC had sponsored an analysis that suggested 18% influenza vaccine effectiveness in elderly persons during this season. Our study objectives were to look at that and then see if we could sort of parse out in which types of vaccines was effectiveness greater or lesser. And so the conclusions of the study that we looked at several vaccines. I think there was probably a half dozen to 6 to 8 stratifications across vaccines. The cell-cultured vaccines appeared to be slightly more effective than the egg-based vaccines. So this was a fairly large issue. So I think the take-home of this is that sort of the real-world evidence can provide near real-time information about effectiveness. So should we need this type of capability in the future, we do have it to do this type of work. Document development, I said these slides are going to get thinner as I get to the end. So there are several FDA work groups that have been constituted and are engaged in sort of the real-world evidence. We have a framework document, and others are obviously under development, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And then as far as activities, we have a working group within CBER that's been engaged discussing sort of the CBER-specific issues that we might have with real-world evidence. I would also say reviews are coming in with real-world evidence. And this gets into the funny phrases of yesterday, which is we're handling those on a case-by-case basis. And per yesterday's discussion, is the data good enough? It depends. Let's see, the other phrase is the devil's in the details. So you pick your phrase. And with that, I'll close. Thank you very much.